Greetings, and welcome to a journey into the heart of late antiquity, a time of profound transformation and the dawn of a remarkable civilization. Tonight, we begin our exploration of the Byzantine Empire, a civilization that arose from the twilight of ancient Rome and shone brightly for over 1,000 years. This is a story of endurance, faith, and cultural synthesis, a quiet narrative designed to accompany you into a restful slumber. Picture, if you will, the bustling streets of Rome in its final centuries of imperial glory. The empire is vast, stretching from the foggy shores of Britannia to the sun-baked deserts of Syria. But its size is also its weakness. The pressures on its borders, both from within and without, are immense. As we drift through this period of decline and change, a new center of power is emerging in the east. We are moving toward the year 330 AAD, when the Emperor Constantine the Great makes a momentous decision to establish a new capital, a new Rome, on the site of the ancient Greek city of Byzantium. This act is more than just a political move. It is a declaration of a new beginning, a shift in the world's axis. The city is renamed Constantinople, a gleaming jewel situated on a strategic crossroads between Europe and Asia, controlling the vital trade routes of the Bosporus. Its deep harbors and formidable walls will come to define it, a city that will stand unconquered for centuries. The Byzantine Empire is not an entirely new entity. It is the direct continuation of the Roman Empire in the East. Its citizens see themselves as Romans, their emperors as the legitimate successors of Augustus. However, over time, a distinct culture begins to form. The dominant language shifts from Latin to Greek. The administrative and legal systems evolve, and a powerful new religion, Orthodox Christianity, becomes the central pillar of state and society. This blending of Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian theology creates a unique and enduring civilization. As you settle in, imagine the gentle lapping of waves against the city walls of Constantinople, the distant sounds of 1,000 voices, the scent of spices from ships in the Golden Horn. This is a world where the Senate still meets, but where the Patriarch of the Church holds immense influence. It is a place of grand public works, intricate mosaics, and a deep, abiding sense of history. Our journey tonight will follow the long, winding story of this empire. We will begin with its foundations under Constantine, tracing the initial separation from the Western Roman Empire. We will then witness its zenith under the brilliant yet ruthless Emperor Justinian I, whose ambitions sought to reclaim the lost glory of Rome. His legal code, the Corpus Juris Civilis, will shape legal systems for a millennium, and his architectural masterpiece, the Hagia Sophia, will stand as a monument to divine splendor. As we continue, we will explore the challenges the empire faces, from the Sasanian Persian and Arab invasions, which reshape its borders and its very identity, to the iconoclasm controversies that tear at the fabric of its faith. We will observe the slow, steady process of its Greekification, as it sheds its Latin past and fully embraces its Hellenic and Christian identity. Later, we will witness a period of rebirth and expansion known as the Macedonian Renaissance, a time of artistic and military revival. But empires, no matter how great, are not immortal. We will follow the slow decline, marked by internal strife, external threats from the Seljuk Turks and the Crusader states, and the fateful sack of Constantinople in 1204. This devastating event marks a turning point from which the empire never truly recovers. Finally, we will arrive at its twilight, a long, quiet sunset leading to the final siege and fall of Constantinople in 1453. Yet, even in its end, the legacy of Byzantium does not vanish. Its scholars carry its knowledge to the West, fueling the Italian Renaissance, and its religious and cultural traditions continue to thrive in the Orthodox world of Eastern Europe and Russia. The story of Byzantium is a testament to the fact that even in decline, an empire can plant seeds that grow into new civilizations. So let your thoughts drift with the slow rhythm of this historical tide. Close your eyes and let the quiet narrative of Byzantium's 1,000-year journey carry you to a peaceful, restorative sleep. We begin our journey in the late 3rd and early 4th centuries, a period of immense strain on the vast Roman Empire. The once unassailable Pax Romana is a distant memory, replaced by the chaos of constant civil wars and the pressures of barbarian incursions along the long frontiers. The capital city of Rome, while still holding immense symbolic power, has become geographically inconvenient for an empire now often fighting its most critical battles in the East. The Emperor Diocletian recognizes this new reality and divides the empire into a system of 4 rulers, the Tetrarchy, which aims to make the empire more governable. But it is his successor, Constantine the Great, who will make the most pivotal decision. In 330 AD, Constantine chooses the site of the ancient Greek city of Byzantium to build a new capital. This choice is no accident. Byzantium, with its strategic position on a promontory jutting into the Bosporus, is a natural fortress. Surrounded on 3 sides by water, the Sea of Marmara, the Golden Horn, and the Bosporus itself, it is almost impregnable. This location controls the vital maritime trade route between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, a choke point for commerce. It also provides easy access to the eastern and Danube frontiers, where the most pressing military challenges lie. Constantine's vision is grand. He razes the old city and builds a new one from scratch, a city designed to rival Rome itself. He fills it with magnificent public buildings, a new Senate house, a massive hippodrome for chariot races, and grand avenues lined with porticos. He also commissions the construction of churches, as he is the first emperor to embrace Christianity and make it a favored religion of the state. The new city is initially called New Rome, but it is quickly known by the name of its founder, Constantinople. Its founding marks a symbolic and practical shift in the empire's center of gravity. While the western half of the empire will slowly unravel, facing repeated invasions and political instability, the east, with its new, secure capital and richer economic base, will not only survive, but thrive. The Greek language, already widely spoken in the eastern provinces, gradually begins to replace Latin in administration and daily life. The Byzantine Empire is not yet a separate entity, but the seeds of its unique identity are being sown. The city is a melting pot of Roman law, Greek culture, and a new Christian piety, all blended together under the firm hand of an emperor who sees his authority as divinely ordained. This sense of sacred purpose will become a defining characteristic of the empire for the next 1,000 years. As the 5th century draws to a close, the Western Roman Empire finally collapses. The last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is deposed in 476 AD. Yet in the East, the Roman state continues uninterrupted. The emperors in Constantinople see themselves as the sole legitimate inheritors of the Roman legacy. They maintain the title of Roman Emperor, and their state remains the Roman Empire. To the people of the time, the empire has not fallen. It has simply shifted its focus entirely to the East. Constantinople is not a successor state. It is the living heart of Rome, beating on from its fortified peninsula. As you listen, imagine the quiet dignity of a city that knows it is the last bastion of a great civilization, a beacon of order and stability in a world of growing chaos. The grand, still unbreached walls stand as a silent promise of endurance, a promise the city will keep for centuries to come. As we move into the 6th century, the Byzantine Empire reaches a pivotal moment, a time of both incredible ambition and great peril. Our gaze now falls upon one of its most memorable figures, the Emperor Justinian I, who reigns from 527 to 565 AD. Justinian is a man of relentless energy and grand vision, who dreams not only of securing the empire's borders, but of restoring the full glory and territorial expanse of the ancient Roman Empire. He sees himself as the emperor of all Romans, both East and West. This era, often called the Age of Justinian, is a high point of Byzantine history, a period of cultural flourishing, legal innovation, and military conquest that leaves an indelible mark. Justinian's reign is defined by his 3 great pillars of power: law, religion, and military might. First, there is his immense legal reform. The Roman legal system, developed over centuries, is a convoluted and contradictory mess. Justinian sets his jurists, led by the brilliant Tribonian, to the task of codifying and clarifying the entire body of Roman law. The result is the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the body of civil law. This monumental work consists of the Code, a compilation of imperial laws, the Digest, a summary of legal opinions, and the Institutes, a textbook for law students. It is a masterpiece of legal thought that will serve as the foundation for the legal systems of countless European nations for centuries to come. As you settle into a state of quiet rest, imagine the immense labor of these scholars, poring over scrolls and texts, bringing order and clarity to 1,000 years of legal tradition. The second pillar is Justinian's architectural and religious ambition. He is a deeply pious emperor, and his faith is reflected in the magnificent churches he commissions. His greatest achievement is the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, built in Constantinople. This is not merely a church. It is a declaration of imperial and divine authority. With its enormous central dome seemingly suspended from heaven and its interior glittering with mosaics and marble, it is designed to inspire awe and devotion. The historian Procopius writes that the dome gives the impression of being suspended from the heavens by a golden chain. Its construction requires innovative engineering and vast resources. Hagia Sophia will remain the world's largest cathedral for nearly 1,000 years and a central symbol of Byzantine identity. Let your mind's eye wander through its vast, echoing space, feeling the serene, sacred atmosphere that Justinian so desperately wished to create. Finally, there is the military expansion. Justinian's general, Belisarius, is one of the most brilliant military commanders in history. With a relatively small force, he embarks on a series of campaigns that aim to reconquer the lost Western Roman Empire. He first takes back North Africa from the Vandals, then moves into Italy to reclaim it from the Goths. These campaigns are initially wildly successful, but they are also costly and prolonged, draining the empire's resources. While Justinian manages to briefly reunite the Mediterranean basin under Roman rule, his conquests are fragile. The Plague of Justinian, a devastating pandemic that sweeps through the empire in 541 AD, further weakens the state and its military. The empire is overstretched and exhausted, and though his dream of a restored Rome is briefly realized, it ultimately proves unsustainable. Justinian leaves behind a legacy of grandeur and overreach, a golden age that is also a prelude to a time of profound struggle. His reign shows us that even the most ambitious dreams can be fleeting, but their impact, like the laws he codified and the churches he built, can last forever. As the curtain falls on the ambitious reign of Justinian, the Byzantine Empire finds itself in a state of exhaustion. The great reconquests in the West have strained its treasury and military, and a devastating plague has thinned its population. The early 7th century presents a new and existential threat, one that will test the very resilience of the empire. We turn our attention to the long and arduous struggle against the Sasanian Persian Empire, a conflict that will bring Byzantium to the brink of collapse before a brilliant leader rises to save it. This is the story of Emperor Heraclius and his dramatic reversal of fortune. The year is 602, and the Emperor Maurice has been overthrown and murdered. The Sasanian Shah Khosrow II uses this as a pretext to launch a massive invasion of the Byzantine Empire. The Sasanian armies sweep across the eastern provinces, capturing Syria, Palestine, and even Egypt, the empire's wealthiest province and its breadbasket. They even reach the shores of the Bosporus, setting up camp just across from Constantinople. The empire is being bled dry, its borders are collapsing, and internal morale is at an all-time low. The city of Jerusalem is captured in 614, and the Persians seize the holiest relic of Christendom, the True Cross, carrying it back to their capital at Ctesiphon. The situation seems hopeless. Into this darkness steps a new emperor, Heraclius, who seizes the throne in 610. He inherits an empire in ruins, but he is a man of remarkable courage and strategic genius. He spends the first few years of his reign rebuilding the army and the economy, reforming the state, and establishing a secure power base. He knows he cannot simply defend his empire. He must go on the offensive. In a brilliant and daring move, he decides to strike at the heart of the Sasanian Empire itself. In 622, he leads his army out of Constantinople, not to defend the provinces, but to invade Persia. This is a profound shift in military strategy, a high-stakes gamble that few would dare to take. As you drift toward sleep, imagine the immense courage this must have taken, leaving your capital vulnerable to your enemies to attack them on their home ground. Heraclius's campaign is a masterclass in ancient warfare. He fights a series of brilliant campaigns, outmaneuvering the Persians and winning key victories. He rallies his troops with religious fervor, framing the war as a holy crusade to reclaim the true cross. He leads from the front, a charismatic warrior emperor who inspires loyalty and courage. The climactic moment comes in 627 at the Battle of Nineveh, where Heraclius's army decisively defeats the main Sasanian force. The Sasanian Shah is overthrown, and a peace treaty is signed in 628 that restores the pre-war borders and, most importantly, returns the true cross to Constantinople. Heraclius rides into the city in triumph, a hero who has saved the empire from the brink of oblivion. The empire is safe, for now. The long war, however, has left both the Byzantine and Sasanian empires utterly exhausted. While Heraclius is a savior, the future will show that this grand struggle has created a power vacuum in the south that a new force, the armies of Islam, will soon fill. The empire has been saved, but its long and arduous history of survival has only just begun. The quiet courage of Heraclius reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope and resilience can still prevail. With the empire's borders momentarily secured after the epic struggle against Persia, a new kind of conflict begins to brew, this time from within. Our narrative now turns to a period of intense internal strife, a theological and political battle that will shake the very foundations of the Byzantine state, the Iconoclast Controversy. This is not a war of armies, but a war of ideas, centered on the use of religious images or icons, and it will last for over a century, dividing the empire's people and its rulers. The controversy erupts in the early 8th century, a time when the empire is facing renewed military pressure, this time from the emerging Muslim caliphates. Some emperors, seeking to explain the empire's recent misfortunes, come to believe that God is punishing them for the sin of idolatry. They argue that the veneration of icons, images of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints, has become a form of worship that violates the Old Testament's prohibition against graven images. They fear that the simple piety of the common people has degenerated into an improper, almost magical use of these holy pictures. The first major blow is struck by Emperor Leo III in 726 when he issues a decree against icons. His son, Constantine Futh, a formidable military leader and a devout iconoclast, continues his father's policy with even greater zeal. He convenes the Council of Hieria in 754, which officially condemns icons and orders their destruction. This policy of iconoclasm, the smashing of icons, is a deeply unpopular and traumatic event for many. To the monks and a large portion of the population, icons are not idols to be worshipped, but windows into the divine, a way to connect with the holy figures they represent. They see the iconoclasts as heretics who are denying the very nature of Christ, who, by his incarnation, made it possible for God to be represented in human form. The destruction of these sacred images, which are so deeply woven into the fabric of daily life and worship, creates a profound rift between the people and the imperial government. Imagine the quiet despair of a devout monk as he watches soldiers tear down a mosaic of Christ from a church wall, or the fear of a family hiding a small, treasured icon under their floorboards. This struggle is about more than theology. It is also a power struggle. The iconoclast emperors see the immense wealth and influence of the monasteries, which are the primary producers and defenders of icons, as a challenge to imperial authority. By seizing monastic land and persecuting those who oppose them, they are attempting to consolidate power in the hands of the state. The controversy ebbs and flows throughout the 8th and early 9th centuries. There are periods of iconophile reaction, where empresses like Irene and Theodora briefly restore the veneration of icons, only for it to be banned again. The conflict finally comes to a resolution in 843, under the Empress Theodora, who once again restores the icons. This time, the decision is permanent. The event is celebrated as the Triumph of Orthodoxy, and it marks a definitive moment in the history of the Orthodox Church. The veneration of icons is now officially and permanently sanctioned, but in a carefully defined way. The Church distinguishes between veneration, proskynesis, which is due to the icon, and worship, latreia, which is reserved for God alone. The resolution of this controversy allows the empire to move forward with a unified religious identity, paving the way for a new era of stability and cultural flowering. With the internal conflict of iconoclasm finally settled, the Byzantine Empire finds a new equilibrium and begins to experience a remarkable period of renewal. We now enter a phase often called the Macedonian Renaissance, a time stretching from the late 9th to the early 11th centuries. This era is named not for the ancient kingdom, but for the Macedonian dynasty founded by Basil I, a man of humble origins who rises to become one of Byzantium's greatest emperors. This is a time of military expansion, a flourishing of arts and learning, and a definitive consolidation of the Byzantine identity. Basil I, who reigns from 867 to 886, is a man of great energy and cunning. He initially seizes the throne through murder, but he quickly proves to be a capable and effective ruler. He initiates a series of legal reforms, updating the Justinian Code, and successfully campaigns against the Arabs in the east and south of Italy. Under his rule and those of his successors, the empire enters a golden age. The military undergoes a significant revitalization. The Byzantine army becomes a professional and highly effective fighting force, using a sophisticated system of tactics and logistics. The empire reclaims lost territories in Anatolia, Syria, and the Balkans, once again becoming a dominant power in the eastern Mediterranean. As you drift into a deeper state of rest, imagine the disciplined ranks of the Byzantine army, their polished helmets and shields gleaming in the sun as they march to expand the empire's borders. Hand in hand with this military resurgence comes a cultural and intellectual rebirth. The imperial court in Constantinople becomes a center of learning. Scholars and artists are patronized by the emperors, and there is a renewed interest in classical Greek and Roman literature, philosophy, and science. Libraries are expanded, and ancient manuscripts are painstakingly copied and preserved. This revival of classical learning, combined with a flourishing of Christian art and theology, creates a unique cultural synthesis. The art of this period is characterized by its elegance and technical perfection. Intricate mosaics and frescoes adorn the walls of newly built churches, their figures rendered with a graceful, serene quality. One of the greatest emperors of this dynasty is Basil II, known as the Bulgar Slayer, who reigns for a remarkable 49 years, 976 to 1025. Basil's sect is a military genius who dedicates his life to expanding and securing the empire. His most significant achievement is the complete conquest of the First Bulgarian Empire, a long and brutal conflict that culminates in the decisive victory at the Battle of Cladion in 1014. His victories expand the empire's borders to their greatest extent since the time of Justinian. Basil's sect is a stern, ascetic emperor, focused entirely on the well-being and security of the state. He leaves behind an empire that is rich, powerful, and culturally vibrant. The Macedonian Renaissance solidifies the empire's identity as a Greek Christian state with a deep respect for its classical Roman roots. It is a period of confidence and stability, a high point in the empire's long history. The quiet splendor of its art, the wisdom of its scholars, and the might of its armies all contribute to a sense of purpose and greatness. As we close this chapter, we leave the empire at its zenith, a glittering beacon of civilization that seems destined to last forever. The glory of the Macedonian Renaissance, while brilliant, does not last forever. As the 11th century progresses, the empire begins to face new and formidable challenges, both from without and from within. Our focus now shifts to a period of decline and dramatic recovery, a time known as the Komnenian Restoration. This era, stretching from the late 11th to the end of the 12th century, is defined by the efforts of a single dynasty to salvage a faltering empire. The initial crisis is a series of military disasters. The Emperor Basil II's successors lack his military genius. In the west, the Normans seize the last Byzantine territories in Italy. In the east, a new, powerful enemy emerges, the Seljuk Turks. They sweep into Anatolia, the heartland of the empire, and in 1071, at the Battle of Manzikert, the Byzantine army suffers a catastrophic defeat. The emperor is captured, and the empire loses control of most of Anatolia, its primary source of soldiers and revenue. This is a staggering blow, one that seems to signal the end of the Byzantine state. The empire is plunged into a period of chaos, civil wars, and political instability. Just when all seems lost, a new dynasty comes to power, determined to restore the empire's fortunes. This is the Komnenos family, beginning with Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, who takes the throne in 1081. Alexios is a pragmatic and brilliant leader. He inherits an empire in shambles, but through clever diplomacy, shrewd military strategy, and a ruthless focus on rebuilding the army, he begins the long and arduous process of restoration. He uses diplomacy to turn potential enemies against each other, secures an alliance with the Venetian Republic in exchange for trade privileges, and reestablishes a stable currency. As you drift deeper into a quiet state, imagine the difficult and delicate work of this emperor, holding a fractured empire together with sheer force of will. The Komnenian period is a time of military resurgence. Alexios and his successors, John II and Manuel I, lead their armies in a series of successful campaigns. They push back the Seljuk Turks in Anatolia and assert Byzantine authority in the Balkans. They also contend with the arrival of a new and often unwelcome force from the West, the Crusaders. The First Crusade, launched in response to Alexios' request for aid against the Seljuks, is a complex mix of alliance and rivalry. While the Crusaders help to recapture some territory, their presence also introduces a new dynamic of distrust and conflict between East and West. The Komnenos emperors must constantly navigate this tricky political landscape. Manuel I Komnenos, the last of the great Komnenian emperors, attempts to restore the empire to a position of global power. He intervenes in Italian politics, forms alliances with Western rulers, and engages in grand military campaigns. He is a charismatic and cultured man, deeply interested in the West, but his ambitions are often beyond the empire's means. His reign ends in 1180, and the dynasty's restoration eventually gives way to another period of decline. The Komnenian era is a testament to what a determined dynasty can achieve, pulling an empire back from the brink of total collapse. They succeed in stabilizing the empire and giving it a final century of relative strength. But they cannot stop the slow, inexorable tide of history. The seeds of the empire's final destruction are already being sown, not just by external foes, but by the growing animosity between the Eastern and Western Christian worlds. We now arrive at one of the most tragic and pivotal moments in the history of the Byzantine Empire, the Fourth Crusade and the subsequent sack of Constantinople in 1204. This event is not the work of foreign invaders or traditional enemies, but of Western European crusaders, allies who were supposed to be helping the Byzantine Empire, not destroying it. This betrayal marks a point of no return, from which the empire can never truly recover its former glory. The Fourth Crusade is initially conceived with the noble goal of recapturing Jerusalem from the Muslims. The Crusaders, however, have trouble raising the funds to pay for their passage to the Holy Land. They turn to the city-state of Venice, a major maritime power, for transport. The Venetians, led by the shrewd and elderly Doge Enrico Dandolo, agree to provide a massive fleet, but on one condition. The Crusaders must first help them capture the rebellious city of Zara on the Adriatic coast. This is a shocking demand, as Zara is a Christian city. The Pope is furious and excommunicates the Crusaders, but they proceed anyway. This act is the first sign that the Crusade's original purpose has been lost to political and financial opportunism. The plot thickens when a young Byzantine prince, Alexios Angelos, arrives with a proposal for the Crusaders. He promises them immense wealth, military support, and a reunion of the Eastern and Western churches if they will help him reclaim the throne of Constantinople for his exiled father. The Crusaders, deep in debt and with their original goal now sidetracked, agree to this proposition. They set sail for Constantinople, not as pilgrims, but as mercenaries. As you drift to sleep, try to imagine the sense of foreboding that must have fallen over the city as the vast, unfamiliar ships of the Crusader fleet appeared on the horizon, not a sign of aid, but of impending disaster. In 1203, the Crusaders successfully assault and occupy parts of Constantinople, restoring Alexios Angelos to the throne as Alexios IV. However, the new emperor finds he cannot fulfill his lavish promises. The people of Constantinople, wary of their Western allies and the emperor who brought them, rebel. A new emperor is proclaimed, and Alexios IV is imprisoned and later strangled. The Crusaders, now without their benefactor and with their payment in doubt, decide to take matters into their own hands. In April 1204, they launch a full-scale assault on Constantinople, not to conquer it for a Byzantine prince, but to seize it for themselves. The sack of Constantinople is a devastating and brutal affair. For 3 days, the city is subjected to a frenzy of looting, murder, and destruction. Priceless works of art, relics, and treasures accumulated over centuries are either destroyed or carried off to the west. The Hagia Sophia itself is desecrated, its icons and altars smashed and plundered. The city's libraries and archives are set ablaze, and with them, countless historical documents are lost forever. The great city, a beacon of civilization for 1,000 years, is left a smoldering ruin. The Crusaders establish a new Latin empire on the ruins of Byzantium. However, this empire is weak and unstable, lasting only 57 years. The Byzantine people, dispersed throughout the region, form successor states like the Empire of Nicaea, determined to one day reclaim their capital. The sack of 1204 not only severely weakens Byzantium, but also poisons relations between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches for centuries to come. The quiet, tragic end of this chapter reminds us that sometimes the greatest dangers come not from your enemies, but from those you mistakenly consider your friends. Despite the catastrophic sack of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire, in a diminished form, refuses to die. We now enter the final centuries of its existence, a long and slow decline under the Palaiologos Dynasty. This is a period marked by civil wars, a desperate struggle for survival, and the gradual withering of an empire that once spanned the Mediterranean. The story of the Palaiologos Dynasty is one of remarkable resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. The remnants of the empire, scattered after 1204, coalesce in a successor state known as the Empire of Nicaea. From this base in western Anatolia, the emperors dedicate themselves to the single-minded goal of reclaiming Constantinople. This dream becomes a reality in 1261, when Michael VIII Palaiologos, a brilliant and opportunistic general, manages to recapture the city from its Latin rulers. The citizens of Constantinople, who have endured decades of foreign rule, greet him with overwhelming joy. Michael VIII is crowned emperor, and the Byzantine Empire is officially restored. However, it is a hollow victory. The new empire is a shadow of its former self. Most of its former territory is now controlled by new powers, and its economic and military might have been shattered. The Palaiologos emperors are forced to rule a small, fragmented state. Their primary focus is now simply on survival. They are constantly beset by enemies on all sides: the growing Ottoman Turks in Anatolia, the Serbians and Bulgarians in the Balkans, and the powerful Italian city-states of Venice and Genoa, who now dominate maritime trade and hold immense economic power in the region. The empire's emperors are constantly forced to make difficult and often humiliating decisions. They must rely on foreign mercenaries, cede land, and even beg for military aid from the West, a difficult and complex task given the bitter memory of 1204. Internal strife also plagues the empire. A series of devastating civil wars, often fought between rival factions of the imperial family, further drains the state's limited resources. The most destructive of these is the Civil War of the 1340s, a conflict that rages for years and completely destabilizes the empire. While Byzantium is distracted by these internal struggles, the Ottoman Turks are quietly consolidating their power. The Ottomans, led by a series of powerful sultans, begin to systematically conquer the remaining Byzantine territories, first in Anatolia and then in the Balkans. By the late 14th century, the Byzantine Empire is little more than a city-state. Constantinople, once the magnificent heart of a vast empire, is all that remains, a lone island in an ever-expanding sea of Ottoman territory. The emperors are effectively vassals of the Sultan, forced to pay tribute and provide military support. Yet, even in this final decline, the city remains a center of culture and learning. Scholars and artists continue to work, and the final flicker of the Byzantine spirit is a cultural one, known as the Palaiologan Renaissance. As you let your thoughts drift, imagine the stark contrast of this final era. A magnificent city, still filled with beautiful churches and learned men, surrounded by the inexorable creep of an enemy empire. This is the empire at its quietest, its existence a testament to the will to endure against all hope. Our long journey through the history of the Byzantine Empire comes to its end in the mid-15th century with the final dramatic siege of Constantinople in 1453. By this time, the once mighty empire has been reduced to a single city, a last remnant of 1,000 years of history. This final chapter is a story of courage, tragedy, and the enduring legacy of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. The Ottoman Empire, now a vast and powerful force, is led by a young and ambitious sultan, Mehmed II. He is determined to capture Constantinople, a city that stands as a tantalizing prize and a constant reminder of the old order. In 1452, he begins construction of a formidable fortress, Rumeli Hisara, on the European side of the Bosporus, effectively cutting off Constantinople's access to the Black Sea. This move is a clear declaration of his intent. The final Byzantine emperor, Constantine V Palaiologos, knows that a siege is inevitable. He sends desperate pleas for help to the west, but the aid that arrives is minimal. A few hundred Genoese and Venetian soldiers, led by the brave Giovanni Giustiniani. The emperor commands a meager force of around 7,000 soldiers, while Mehmed's army is a colossal force of over 80,000 men, supported by a powerful navy and an immense arsenal of new technologically advanced cannons. The siege begins in April 1453. For weeks, the city's legendary walls, which have protected it for over a millennium, are bombarded by the massive Ottoman cannons. The largest of these, a giant gun cast by a Hungarian engineer named Urban, is a terrifying weapon, firing huge stone balls that slowly but surely crumble the ancient fortifications. The city's defenders, despite being vastly outnumbered, fight with incredible bravery and ingenuity. They repair the walls at night, repel Ottoman assaults, and even manage to destroy a few of the enemy's siege engines. Constantine V leads from the front, a warrior emperor fighting for his city and his faith. The decisive moment arrives on May 29, 1453. After weeks of bombardment and failed attacks, the Ottomans launch a final all-out assault before dawn. The attackers manage to breach a section of the city walls, and a few hundred Janissaries, the elite Ottoman infantry, storm into the city. The defenders are overwhelmed. The emperor, Constantine V, is last seen fighting alongside his men, and his body is never found. With the fall of the emperor, the last vestiges of the Roman Empire finally come to an end. The city is subjected to a period of violence and looting, but Mehmed II, who enters the city later that day, quickly establishes order. He declares Constantinople his new capital, renamed Istanbul, and orders the Hagia Sophia to be converted into a mosque, a symbolic act that marks the transition of power. The fall of Constantinople is more than just a military defeat. It is a seismic event that sends shockwaves across Europe. But the legacy of Byzantium does not end here. In fact, it spreads. Byzantine scholars fleeing the city in the decades leading up to and after the siege carried their precious manuscripts and knowledge of ancient Greek learning to the West. They play a crucial role in the Italian Renaissance, helping to spark a rebirth of classical humanism. The Byzantine tradition of Orthodox Christianity continues to thrive in Russia and Eastern Europe, where Moscow begins to see itself as the Third Rome. The empire's art, architecture, and religious traditions continue to shape cultures and identities for centuries. The story of Byzantium reminds us that even when empires fall, their ideas, their art, and their spirit can live on, carried by the quiet tides of history, inspiring new generations and leaving an indelible mark on the world. As we conclude this narrative, let the enduring spirit of this remarkable civilization guide you to a peaceful and profound rest.